Well, happy Tuesday and welcome to VA Careers Live. My name is Mike Owens and I'm Human Resources Specialist with the Veterans Health Administration, as well as your host for our weekly segment, Talk About It Tuesday. If you're tuning in for the first time, I just want to let you know that we are here every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Time. So feel free to grab a snack, grab something to drink, and join us as we talk about careers here at VA. Now, whether you're tuning in for the first time or you've been with us for the whole 3 years of our program, remember, we want you to be part of our broadcast. So feel free to leave any questions and comments in the comment section. Our team and I, we love to go through those questions throughout the day and throughout the week. And even on some special broadcasts, we're able to answer some of your questions here live. So again, if you want to be heard, go ahead and put your comments and questions in the comment section. Now, we all know someone who wants to work for VA, so we do ask that you please share our broadcast. We would like to get information out to as many people as possible. So again, click that share button, and we have two hashtags that are associated with this broadcast. One is hashtag work at VA. Again, hashtag work at VA. And then our second hashtag is hashtag VA careers. Again, our two hashtags associated with this broadcast is hashtag work at VA and hashtag VA careers. So with that, we're going to go into our program for this week. So today I have a very special guest. Today we're going to be talking about working at VA's Office of Geriatrics and Extended Care. And we have a very, very, very special person who can tell us all about that office. She's originally from Southern California, but now she's located in the DC area. She's the Deputy Executive Director of the VA's Office of Geriatrics and Extended Care, and her name is Ms. Cheryl Schmitz. So, Ms. Schmitz, welcome to our broadcast.
Thank you. I sound so impressive when you introduce me.
You're always impressive. You know, you do great things, Ms. Schmitz. So we're happy to have you on our broadcast, and we're happy that you've taken some time out of your busy schedule to be with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So again, as I mentioned, for anyone who's just tuning in, we're with Ms. Cheryl Schmitz today. She's going to be talking with us today about working for VA's Office of Geriatrics and Extended Care. So Ms. Schmitz, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. So first question is, okay, obviously you work for VA. What first brought you to the VA?
Well, I have been a nurse for nearly 30 years, and I've been with the VA for actually about the last 5. Okay. Much of my clinical background was as an emergency nurse, both in large academic medical centers as well as smaller community hospitals. Okay. And so, I cared for patients of all ages, from infants up to geriatrics, and with all sorts of, the span of the illness or injury. About 10 years or so ago, the private healthcare world was really looking at changing its reimbursement model, and rates were being evaluated, and hospitals didn't know what would happen. And so it became a very tumultuous time in the private healthcare world. And so there was really this concern about bottom line. And so some organizations were very proactive, trying to not have that affect their bottom line. And for me, there were some changes to staffing and to care delivery models. And it really made me pause and reevaluate what I was doing. So for generations in my family, I have multiple family members who have served in the military. Awesome. I have a lot of friends who are veterans. And I'll be honest, I really only knew what was in the media about the VA and VA healthcare. And when you think about 10 years ago, it wasn't always the best news that was out there. But I did have an opportunity to work as a contractor, actually, so a nurse contractor with the Office of Community Care at the time. And so they were working on standing up the Mission Act and the Community Care Network. And it gave me a much different view of what was happening in the VA and the Veterans Health Administration. And so I was able to see firsthand how innovative the VA is, and although there is bureaucracy, and sometimes there are multiple layers to getting things done, I really was able to see that if the veteran and the veteran's safety is at the center of what's being done, then support's going to be provided. So I was able to shift from a contractor to an actual VA position as a nurse. At the time, I was working with the central office community care as an RN. So that was really an exciting time for me.
Awesome. So I know a lot of people that are watching, although I work for the Veterans Health Administration, I'm not on the clinical side of the house. And I know a lot of people, when they think geriatrics, they think of the older population. So from just that point of view, how did you become interested, or what interests you in working with the older veterans and the Office of Geriatrics and Extended Care?
So a couple of things. So first of all, just kind of on the larger scale, I think, I always want to make I always want to make a difference in a positive way.
Right.
And, as a nurse, that's always one of my goals. And obviously the world is not, just unicorns and rainbows. But if I'm able to have, any sort of a positive influence to make things better, then I count that as successful. Now, you mentioned something about older people. I want to kind of clear a couple things up. So first of all, the Office of Geriatrics and Extended Care, it's a bit of a misnomer because the most of our programs actually do not have an age requirement. It's really based on clinical need. So kind of looking at it a couple of different ways. For the geriatrics and extended care, or as we like to call them, GEC programs, that ranges from home-based primary care to homemaker home health aid for veterans, all the way to facility-based care and and the nursing home level of care. Additionally, we also include hospice and palliative care. There are about 15 or 18 programs in total, and there's only a small population of those that actually are related to age. So first of all, I want to, for that piece, I want to take down that misnomer. But for the job world, the specialty of geriatrics is, oh my goodness, it's huge, and there is a huge need. As I mentioned from the different programs, the possibilities within VA are endless. And I will tell you that there are positions open all over the country in various settings, and things that you wouldn't even necessarily think about as a clinician. I am in the central office in Washington, D.C. as a nurse, and I am required to maintain my licensure and all of my certifications. But I could also be out in the field at a VISN, which is basically the VA's equivalent of a regional area. Mm-hmm. And, it ranges from physicians, nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, pharmacists. That specialized knowledge for that population is just so incredible. Any clinicians are aware that as anybody ages, everything becomes more complex. And so having that specialty knowledge is huge. If anyone watching actually is a geriatrician or a geriatric specialist, there is a good possibility that some of that training actually occurred within the VA, because we also are really a very large partner with right. With medical schools and nursing schools, and and basically ensuring that our practitioners are ready to meet the challenge. So, like I said, it's a big world, for both geriatrics as an aging population, as well as the geriatrics and extended care programs, which are vast and not age related.
Right. You know what? I'm glad you said that, because I'm going to bring up a story really quickly. Before I got into this position here on the national level, I worked at a VA medical center. I won't say which one, because I don't want someone trying to track down who I'm talking about. But At the time, I was working in the Office of Public Relations, and I was talking to, at the time, the chief of geriatrics at that VA medical facility. And I remember mentioning the older population, and she wagged her finger at me. She said, "Michael, geriatrics does not only mean old people." And I caught off guard because when you think of it, you think of the older population when you hear that word. But she told me that geriatrics does not necessarily mean just the older population. So but I never got a full explanation on why that was, and you just gave it to me. So thank you.
So I will tell you, we have a branding problem. And it is geriatrics and extended care. Yeah. So it's the and that gets lost. So maybe we need to be extended care programs and geriatrics.
Right.
I don't know, but
you made it. I still remember what she said some years ago, and you finally made it all make sense. So thank you. I learned something new on these broadcasts. So thank you. So I won't try to delay it any longer. So speaking of the Office of Geriatrics and Extended Care, what type of career opportunities are available under this specialty or specialties or in this office?
As I mentioned, it is, it runs the gamut. First of all, thinking about central office, we have physicians, we have nurses, we have dietitians, we have social workers, we have folks who are not clinical. And it takes all of us to make things work, because it really is that difference of the views, the difference of experiences that really helps us be innovative and the best. Right. And so, so that's just the central office component. And then when you really think about getting out into the field, then, besides the clinical roles and, again, the physicians, the nurses, the nurse practitioners, the recreational therapists, the respiratory, it just goes on and on, pharmacists, it goes on and on and on. There is not a clinical discipline that the VA does not employ. And so, I think that there are so many different opportunities. And if you're not clinical, again, there in the field, there are entry-level positions, from scheduling and, and basically doing administrative type work. So it's just, it can very much, kind of start a career regardless of, what your level or your kind of desires are, which is really neat. And I think in general, healthcare is really special that way because there really is a niche for everyone. And it's just a matter of kind of finding the fit that works with your personality and what you like to do. So I think that, there are no other career fields. There is no other type of work that is, offers the variability, the variety, as well as the satisfaction.
Awesome. So, but before we go to the next question, I just want to, for our audience that may have jumped in after the interview started, today we're talking to Ms. Cheryl Smits. She's the Deputy Executive Director for the VA's Office of Geriatrics and Extended Care. And today we're talking about careers that fall under VA's Office of Geriatrics and Extended Care. So if you missed the first part of our conversation, as you know, we'll have this full conversation in its entirety on our social media sites. So feel free to come back at a later time and feel free to come back at a later time and watch the broadcast. So you ready for the rest of the questions? You ready for part two?
Ready.
All right, so part two is, what makes working in geriatrics at VA different from, different for other healthcare providers, different for working for other healthcare providers?
So the VA is really on the leading edge of care for aging in general. Mm-hmm. We provide more programs to assist veterans as they age and help keep them home than even Medicare does. We are obviously a government agency, so there are some process things that, can be confusing, but we're still getting things done and we're still making programs better and, more widespread.
Right.
In a traditional healthcare system, an idea or a project could be implemented to maybe, 5, 10, maybe 50 hospitals. But when we're making a national change, it's going to nearly 200 medical centers and hundreds of community-based, outpatient clinics.
Right.
The opportunity to really make change is just really incredible within the VA and the Veterans Health Administration.
Awesome. So from the broadcast, we have people that are watching that are interested in coming and working in the various careers that or the career fields that VA has to offer. So for anyone that's looking to come to the VA working under the Office of Geriatrics and Extended Care, what could you tell them the type of qualities that you all look for in a candidate who wants to work under this office or in this career field?
Well, I think there's probably two primary characteristics. I indicated earlier that, healthcare in general, there is a place for everyone, regardless of their personality type, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, whether you're clinical or not.
Right.
But one of the biggest qualities that I think is critical is dedication. And that is to veterans, dedication to making things better, to your colleagues. Every role is integral in the care of our veterans. And I know it sounds hokey, but it really does take a team. And then the second quality I would say is flexibility. The VA is not an organization that stands, on kind of the idea or the premise of we've always done it that way, so we're going to keep doing it that way. We're really working to make the programs and processes better and provide, higher quality and, a safe environment. And that really means that we have to be willing to change. So I would say dedication and flexibility.
Awesome. So our last question of today, we finally got to the end, and you've given us a lot of great information. So I know our audience out there, they're probably going to VA careers right now to find those jobs that are in geriatrics. So we thank you for all your information. But what would you say is your favorite thing about working at VA, specifically in the Office of Geriatrics and Extended Care?
Well, I'm sure you can tell by now, I'm very shy and retiring. But one of the things that I really, really enjoy is I love the pace of the work. I love the focus of, doing things better for our aging veterans. And that doesn't mean old veterans. That means we're all aging every day.
Not you.
No, I'm going backwards.
Right.
But the overarching goal, really is for us to allow veterans to age safely at home whenever it's possible, as well as to provide top-notch facility-based care when that's needed. Right. I've been with GEC now for about 3 years, and I've seen us grow as an office. Which means we've really had the opportunity to become more proactive in our approach to our programs rather than reactive. Right. So, right now, for example, we are in year 2 of a multi-year expansion for some of our home and community-based programs, which, as I indicated, is generally veterans of all ages, by the way. Right. And so, we've really been just proactive in making things better, in improving processes. And it's not going to stop because our population is just continuing to age. So, I said my background was emergency nursing. And although this is not emergency, it is very, fast paced. It is very, different from day to day. And that's what I love about what I'm doing. And so I don't scare anybody away. Not all roles have that same craziness to it. So I just very much, appreciate that there are ways for, everyone to kind of fit and have a voice.
Right. Well, I thank you for that. And, you want to know the one thing I learned? I won't say the one thing. The one thing I learned from this broadcast today is that even I can be considered geriatric. See, I feel so special now. Nah, but with that, I just want to say thank you. You serving as the Deputy Executive Director for VA's, Office of Geriatrics and Extended Care. I know you have a busy schedule. I know you're busy all day. I can just imagine the amount of meetings you're in on a daily basis. So with that, I want to say thank you for taking this time to spend with us today. We really appreciate it, and I know our audience appreciates it. So from me, my team, and from the audience, I just want to say thank you.
And I want to say thank you so much for thinking of us and for allowing us the opportunity to highlight the various opportunities that are out there for both the geriatrics and extended care programs, as well as the geriatric veteran population.
Awesome. Thank you. So with that, we thank you for watching us. As I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, if you're watching and you were not able to catch the beginning of the broadcast, you can go back to our social media sites and we'll have this interview in its entirety on our various VA career social media sites. So feel free to go back. If you have any questions about geriatrics and extended care within VA, you want us to forward those questions over to Ms. Smits. Be sure to submit those questions and we'll send those questions over to her to give you an answer. So with that, we thank you for watching and we will see you on next Tuesday. Have a great day.